for that short break. Today is World Press Freedom Day, and it's a commemoration, an annual commemoration held every May the 3rd. This to celebrate the fundamental principles of press freedom. And the day is observed to raise awareness on the importance of the freedom of the press and remind government of their duty to uphold and respect the right of freedom of expression, which is enshrined under Article 19 of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Here in Nigeria, the right is guaranteed under Section 39 of the Constitution, which states that every person shall be entitled to the freedom of expression, including freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart ideas and information without interference. Well, this day also serves as a remembrance for journalists who have lost their lives in service to humanity. And that's what we will be discussing now, looking at the impact, the significance, where we are as a country, and the way forward for a better press freedom commemoration, so to speak. In the studio with us is the founder and executive director of Hertford Foundation, Oluyemi Orija. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
What's your general assessment of the level of press freedom in Nigeria?
Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give it a 6, first of all. And I would say that press freedom is very fundamental, especially when it comes to human rights generally, globally. And the reason why this is so is because a lot of people really rely on the press to get the right information. A lot of Nigerians and all over the world rely on the press because, I mean, the press is recognized as the fourth arm of the government. So I'd say that the press cannot be independence of the press cannot be overemphasized. It is important for us to say we are, really practicing the democratic system of government.
So for journalists across the world, we're facing, different challenges. Absolutely. By the time you go about doing your reportorials, your responsibility, being socially responsible, reporting issues, bringing issues to, to the fore, you tend to face, some challenges, with people slamming libel, defamation, etc., as the case may be, against you. How do you feel journalists have been faring in the world in practicing their profession without fear or hindrance?
Well, I mean, bringing it down to Nigeria, it is obvious. I mean, currently we have a lot of journalists behind bars. A lot of journalists have been arrested. Some have been sued in a civil suit, asking them to pull down some publications and all of that. So it's a reality, but unfortunately, that is not what it ought to be. We have laws. You just quoted the, Section 39 of the Nigerian Constitution, giving it expressly that the press should be free. And that's the only way we can really enjoy democracy, as it were. And again, when we talk about these people whose right has been infringed, it is having impact on younger journalists because you then feel like the profession is not a safe one. I mean, a lot of people actually study journalism but would not practice it because of the fear that their freedom is not guaranteed. They cannot stand for justice. They cannot stand for the truth. It could be very, it's something that could hurt you as a person, that you're really reporting the truth. But because you're dealing with powers that be, you are not allowed to operate freely. So I'd say that today, being the World Press Freedom Day, it's a day for us to remind ourselves all over again the importance of the independence of the press and freedom of expression generally, and for us to say, to tell the stakeholders, the government, to do the needful and allow the press to really do its work. And that is the only time that we can enjoy democracy.
The 2023 Global Index on Press Freedom puts Nigeria 123 out of about 180 countries. And so an interpretation would be that you would first look at 122 countries, as safe places to practice journalism before you come to Nigeria. But when you look at this ranking, how do you relate with it? Do you think it's a fair appraisal of, what journalists face in this country? And in terms of accountability, who is to blame?
Well, it's not fair. I mean, okay, is it fair as to the number that we are in, the position that we're in? I think that is the reality. I mean, I'm in practice. I'm a lawyer, and I go to court every day. And I see how even media houses are being brought to court, you know, for different charges. Some say libel, some say criminal defamation, you know. Some people say, because we now have digital press, some people say they bring the charges under the Cybercrime Act in Nigeria. So I'd say that's the reality. It's really pathetic. And the truth of the matter is a lot of people are really pulling out of this profession just because of this. Some cannot practice fairly, so they will rather push the agenda of the people in the of the powers that be, rather than doing the profession as it were. So I'd say it's fair. That's the true position of things, right? And moving away from that, I also look at the way we look at the things, looking at the government of the day. We are hopeful that this government maybe would do something very differently when it comes to independence of the press, because it is very essential, right? So we're hopeful. That's all I can say about the government of the day.
Another leg of the question would also be, like in February, we saw how a federal high court ordered the federal government to investigate all the past deaths of journalists, even including that of Dele Giwa, that more than 30 years after it has occurred, we are where we are. Nobody knows for certain who carried out or who ordered, the killing. Nobody has been brought to book. Nobody has even been prosecuted. In terms of, gaining this kind of closure, and that's not the only one. So many journalists have also, like you must be aware. How do you see it as an easy task, for the government of the day to, get that done, to have that investigated, prosecution and all of that? Can we make that progress?
Absolutely, I believe so. When the government has the will to do anything, trust me, it will be done. So I believe the government has the capacity, it has the resources, the materials to get it done. It also has the capacity to give the closure to the family, to the profession, and every other person that looks up to journalism as a way of livelihood and as a way of, giving back to the society and really upholding justice. It's really a way to give them closure if the government can do this. We are really hopeful that the government would do, because I believe they have the capacity to do. But much more than that, we would also look at the Nigerian people, because sometimes the government is trying to do something and we as a people are not also ensuring or helping to bring it, to make it materialize. How is that possible? I mean, there are powerful people in this country, all right? So when the government is doing its bit on one hand, and the powerful people in this country are doing the other, something else on the other hand, when you now see private individuals, being prosecuted, prosecuting press, telling press to pull down stuff, private individuals. So it's not just the government. We as the Nigerian people also have a role to play in this.
Right. So the thing is, Nigeria, let's look at Nigerian law and, press or press freedom and all of that. I know there are different publications that actually engender the press to be able to, have access to information. For instance, the FY Act, which journalists, and every other person, makes use of to be able to, access information and all of that. I'm not sure what exactly is Section 28, but I know journalists also enjoys Section 37, 38, 39, 40, and 41. So I'm not exactly sure the much ado about the press freedom. When you're giving your right on the right hand, and then it's taken back, with the left hand, the Section 45 saying that none of these sections should invalidate any law that is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society, which includes defense, public safety, public order, etc., etc. So what exactly is the press freedom in our Constitution?
Okay, so by the Constitution and globally, when it comes to freedom of expression and freedom of the press, there is no law that is absolute. There is always limitation to it. And why should there be limitation? It's because you would not use your right to infringe on somebody else's right, all right? I have the right to hold opinion. Now, that my opinion makes sense is something entirely different. So you would not say because you have a right of freedom of expression, you then infringe on my own right to hold my own opinion, all right? So the way the Constitution is couched, Nigeria is not the only country that couches it that way. And that's because we would not give, if it's that open, people, I mean, we see what is going on social media these days. Social media is also another leg of the media, all right? And because people are not really educated as to how to use social media, you see a lot of slander everywhere. Things that does not even, it is not true, it is criminal, and people just say it without any form of fear, you know, because they just do not believe anything would happen. I'll say it anyways. And we have to come to a position in this country where we educate people as to how they have to exercise their right to ensure they are not infringing on someone else's right. Because the truth is, if you do report something that is wrong, someone has to take action. Because if no one is taking action, it will be the order of the day, and then we live in a jungle. So I'd say it is well couched, and it has to be restricted to a reasonable extent.
But there's also the concern that talking about the Constitution and the powers, the constitutional powers of the press, obligations to the public to ensure accountability by government, you know, under Section 22, you know, this issue of fundamental objectives which are largely not enforceable. You know, where do you also stand in that, okay, this is a right, this is a duty that the Constitution recognizes, but then just how far can you go under the law to fight for this right?
Unfortunately, that chapter of the Constitution is not enforceable. So when the government is not doing what it ought to do, we are, as citizens, we should question, we should ask questions. But while doing it, do it respectfully. I think that's where the line is. We should not cross the line of, I want to question the government as to how you're using the money that comes to my constituency. How the things that has been budgeted for, why is it not being executed? I can question, I can write, I can, as a press, as a journalist, you can put these things, but in a polite way. However, we've seen power-driven governments, you know, even when the press or the journalist has done it in a polite way, are still, you know, taking action in a negative way by arrested. I mean, one was the one in Cross River State some time ago, where the governor at the time arrested the journalist for a period of time. Right. So all of these things, it is unlawful. But again, the government at the time enjoys immunity, you know. So even if the journalists wanted to take action, you would wait for the governor of the day to leave. So there are a lot of, it's law, right? And there's always loopholes. There's always the ones that favors you. There's always the one that doesn't. But at the end of the day, I believe that justice can actually be achieved. If you feel that as a journalist, your right to exercise your duty has been infringed upon, please take action.
I want to see how we've actually been faring, how we're doing, you know, in this day and age compared to when we started before, you know, during the military junta in Nigeria. So from 1999 up until now, I know that certain things cannot be said under the Obasanjo regime, but certain things were said under the Jonathan regime and that of Aradua, Muhammad Buhari, and currently where we see a lot of people who are disgruntled or who are dissatisfied with the outcome of the 2023 general election, and they began, you know, lampooning, maligning, and also defaming, even to the extent of throwing up wrong information about, I'm talking about the social media in this regard. So do you feel that with the rise of social media, how do you feel that people are using this responsibly and in using it either for or against misinformation, disinformation, malformation, and there is another one I can't remember, you know, in all of this way of sharing information? Do you feel the social media as a platform of reaching out or disseminating information is well regulated on our own soil?
Regulated, yes, because there are laws in this country. One is the Cyber Crime
Prohibition
Act. Right. That law, for me, has regulated social media already, because there is really nothing that you would do on social media that law doesn't cover. So I believe that when it comes to regulation, we have laws that can take care of it. However, are people using the platform responsibly? I would say no. I mean, me as a user as well, I've seen some things and I'm like, how is this happening in this country? All right. So people's life has been taken away by social media. We cannot shy away from the importance of social media and how it has helped Nigerians get justice, how it has helped Nigerians get results. We cannot shy away from that. So it definitely has its own advantages. But the disadvantages are also enormous. And that's because a lot of people have not been taking action. But I think in recent time, when it comes to social media, there was one where somebody was talking about the paternity of a child. And you just say, look at a child and say it resembles this person, and so therefore they should go and do a DNA test and confirm that the wife has not cheated. You know, and the gospel artist took it up, went to court, and I was so impressed about that. So I think we have to get to that point where people really understand that there are consequences. But much more than that, before we talk about consequences, people need to be educated. So I think we should do more about the orientation of the law. This is where the National Orientation Agency comes in. Talk about the law, the Cyber Crime Prohibition Act. You know, talk about it, educate Nigerians about the content of it, the consequence if you go against that law. There are also laws, criminal defamation in the criminal code. We have different laws that had already regulated social media. But I think that Nigerians, we like consequences a lot. We like going to prison a lot, you know, and charging people to court. I don't know what you mean by that.
and even the law that you mentioned now has also even received some knocks of recent. The Terrorism Prohibition Act and the Cyber Crimes Prohibition Act that you mentioned, because some activists have said it's unduly harsh on journalists. It's too open-ended, as in you could just, you know, think that you've gotten a balanced report there. It could be an expose on a powerful person, but then somebody like the Cross River case you mentioned now, you know, the prosecution of the popular journalist was brought under under, it was called, was it cyber stalking or something like that? So that is cyber bullying, cyber stalking, and the likes. But I want to take you back to an earlier point you made about, you know, the onus on journalists themselves. Lawsuits are the order of the day. If you are not on this side of the law, you could, you know, face a lawsuit, defamation, and all of that. How do you avoid that, or how do you walk your way as a journalist now? Okay, so we are speaking to you, a legal person now on all of this. What do you think, you know, journalists can do to protect themselves?
Right. Okay. So first thing is do your duty as it were, politely. All right, because we cannot also shy away from the fact that some people has been unduly irresponsible while quote and unquote doing their duty. So I'd say do your job respectfully and you know, responsibly. If you do that, and you know that under no circumstance, like I am well protected. When I mean protected, I mean by the law. I have done everything according to the law. Then, it is not a guarantee that because you've done it well, you would not face some violations of human rights. Unfortunately, it happens. So when that comes, you then have all the material that you need to weather the storm. And much more than that, as journalists, I believe that you should have a community, because sometimes around the 36th state of this country, there are some journalists that are actually facing charges that no one knows about, right? So you should have community of colleagues that you can talk to, that can be aware of whatever it is that you're going through. Because if people are not aware of it, then probably solution would not come. So that's where community comes in. Have your lawyer, importantly. Your lawyer would do so much more for you in that regard. So I said those are the things I advise, that as every journalist setting out time to do their job, please arm yourself with all of these materials and resources.
So if you look at what is happening on the global scale, for instance, the genocidal act that is going on against the Palestinians, and the journalists who are reporting, you know, more than 100 of them are being targeted and killed, even alongside their families and all of that. And we also have some things like that which had happened in this country, and some happening. How do you feel some of those journalists who died in the line of duty, how do you feel you know, it's good for them to be remembered? And those of us who are still striving to keeping up the social responsibility and our own duty, you know, to to the people. How do you feel that, what do you think we can learn from this? And, mainly, how should they be remembered?
How should they be remembered? This day is set aside. This is one of the reasons this day is set aside. You mentioned the issue of Delegiwa as well. We've seen a lot of people on the global scene dying as journalists doing their work, essentially capturing the Israel-Gaza situation. And I'll say much more than this day celebrating the heroes of journalism. I'll say the government, if they do realize the importance of media in our society, and every country of the world is clamoring democracy, democracy. There's no democracy without freedom of the press. So I'd say that if we do recognize that, we can do much more for their families. We can do much more for their community as well. And as journalism as a body, I believe, I do not know how strong that body is, really is when it comes to welfare of journalists. And I think there should be a body that every journalist belongs to, and are certain that their welfare and that of their family in situations like this are well catered for, and somebody is speaking on their behalf. So doing all of this, I believe that it will be a better way for a journalist to say, should I even die in the line of duty, my legacy is in place, and my family will not suffer.
Well, that's all the time that we have, on this leg of our discussions on the program today. Oluyemi Orija, founder, Headford Foundation, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank